This lecture is on the large intestine. So the large intestine contains what I will simply call friendly bacteria. These are bacteria that do not do us harm so long as they stay in the large intestine, and they actually do us good. And no actual digestion, so no breakdown of food for us then takes place in the large intestine. So, first off then, absorption of water. Is a principal function. The chyme going through your small intestine is pretty liquidy, so you then wind up getting a lot of the water back due to the work of the large intestine. Then another function of the large intestine then is absorption of vitamins, specifically the vitamins that are produced by the bacteria that are found in the large intestine. I told you they're friendly bacteria, so you can see now these are bacteria that live in our colon, that is to say the large intestine. And in the large intestine, they sit there, we give them a nice warm, wet environment. They can actually use some of the food that we can't digest, and in the process of existing, some of them make vitamins, which we happen to need. So, as I said, these are friendly bacteria. So, these bacteria then live on some of our undigested food material, and they produce a vitamin you may never have heard of called vitamin K. Vitamin K is involved in your blood clotting reactions, and one of the reasons you may never have heard of it is that frequently people do not wind up with deficiencies of vitamin K because our bodies, or rather the bacteria living in our intestines, make it for us. So as long as we have reasonably healthy flora in our large intestine, they're making vitamin K for us, which we can then absorb. So as I said, there is vitamin K, which is used in the blood clotting process. And these bacteria also produce some of the B vitamins. Now, you can see a problem that might come up. If large doses of an antibiotic then are given, they can destroy intestinal bacteria. Remember, antibiotics kill bacteria. It's what they do. One thing that can come up in your careers as people in the health professions is that people may not understand that antibiotics do not kill viruses. So any kind of a viral illness from the common cold to COVID-19 will not be cured by antibiotics. But antibiotics do kill bacteria. This can include whatever bacteria might be making you ill if you have an infection, but on the other hand, in the process, they may also knock out your gut bacteria. So if this takes place long term, not just for a few days, but if you wind up with your intestinal bacteria destroyed over a long period of time, this can eventually result in a vitamin K deficiency. So then the third principal function of the large intestine is elimination. Getting rid of the stuff. So this then is technically the removal of undigested and indigestible material from the GI tract. And these materials are known as feces. So, a little bit of the gross anatomy of the large intestine. So the large intestine, also known as the colon, then is approximately 1.5 meters. Is to say about 5 feet long and approximately 7.5 centimeters. That is to say about 3 inches wide. So it has a larger diameter and thinner walls. Than the small intestine. And the boundary then between the small and large intestines is guarded by the ileocecal valve. And this is a useful term because what happens is that you have, let's go over here to draw it up a little bit bigger for you. Here is what is going to happen. What you are going to have is the last bit of the small intestine. Here it is. So here is the ileum. And it winds up then intersecting the large intestine. Here's a valve. I'm just making a hole there, but we have a valve there. And then we wind up having the first part of the large intestine. This is not perfectly done to scale, but right in here then, this part of the large intestine is known as the cecum. So what you have then is you have the junction. The valve between the ileum and the cecum is known as the ileocecal valve. So it's all pretty simple and straightforward. So let's look at some landmarks. First, the chyme. Having gone through the ileum now, we are now talking about the large intestine. So the chyme then enters the cecum, which is an expanded chamber. And the appendix, which is fully known as the vermiform or worm-shaped appendix, is a slender attachment to the cecum. So here we have the appendix. And if that appendix becomes inflamed, this is the problem known as appendicitis. You may have heard of appendicitis. This is a sometimes fatal condition. Basically, as that tiny little tube, it's a dead-end tube. A dead-end tube off of another dead-end tube is a perfect place for a bacterial colony. And sometimes you can wind up with a little bit of a blockage in that. And when that happens, you have bacteria breeding up and they have nowhere to go. And so as a result, then you can wind up with an inflammation taking place. You wind up with ever more bacteria continuing to breed in this clogged up place, basically. And at that point, you can wind up with the bacteria stressing the walls of the appendix. And at that point, you have an inflamed appendix. The person will start hurting. If somehow or another that inflammation goes away, the person may be okay. But what frequently happens is that the appendix is in danger of bursting. If the appendix bursts, then the person is in very serious trouble. They are in danger for their lives at that point, because you're now having all of these bacteria entering the abdominal cavity, and the interior of the abdominal cavity is usually sterile. So you don't want bacteria invading that space. When they do, courtesy of a burst appendix, that person in the old days before antibiotics would have died. The thing to do, if possible, is to remove the inflamed appendix before it bursts. We can live without it, we can cut it out, we can sew up the hole, and the person will be fine. If the appendix bursts, they are in danger, but the person can be treated with antibiotics and they might live. But, as I said, a burst appendix that is not treated is very likely to be fatal. So there we have appendicitis. This is something that people get from time to time, and when they do, it should be taken very seriously. You go to the hospital, you get it surgically removed, you get better, essentially. Okay, so the cecum, meanwhile, is the first part of the ascending colon. So the ascending colon is basically where the food is moving up, where the food is ascending. So the ascending colon then ascends along the right side of the abdominal cavity. Okay, so that means over here we have the chyme coming out of the ileum. Here I'm going to do chyme in blue. It's moving along, it's moving along. And here we have, as I said, this kind of peculiar area that does not have flow, but you will wind up with chyme in here. But eventually what happens is that the chyme winds up ascending. And remember, you're looking at the person, so right and left are reversed. So here we have the ascending colon. And this is strictly diagrammatic. It's not exactly what it's going to look like, but it gives you the idea. So here we have the ascending colon all throughout here, including but not limited to the cecum. So here you have the ascending colon. So then, the right, and here we're getting into some technical terms here, the right colic flexure. Hang on a moment. The right colic flexure, then, which is also known as the hepatic flexure. Hepatic because it's near the liver. Where you see hepatic, it has to do with the liver. But basically, we have a flexure, a place where the colon takes a turn, like this. And this area right in here, and that is the right colic flexure. There. So the right colic or hepatic flexure then marks the transition to the transverse colon. So here we have the transverse colon. The transverse colon then continues to the left, and then near the spleen, another organ found in your abdomen. It's not a digestive organ, it's a part of your immune system, so a part of what is called the lymphatic system. Okay, anyway, near the spleen, the colon then turns caudally. I hope you remember the term caudal from when we were doing terms having to do with directions in the body. Caudal means towards the tail, just as dorsal means towards the back or the backbone. Caudal means towards the tail. So here now we have the colon turning again and turning basically down towards the tail. So towards the tail, making the left colic, also known as the splenic flexure. What did I just say? Basically, the colon takes another turn here, is what I'm telling you. It goes like that. so here then is the left colic flexure. That's what that is. So there we have the left colic flexure, a place where it flexes. And then we get to the descending colon. So the descending colon then begins. And it travels downward, as the name descending implies, along the left side. So here, now you can see, in fact, let's draw in the chyme so you get a better look at it. Here we have the chyme that is ascending and then traversing and then descending. And so the chyme is then descending through the descending colon, which is this here. This is going to be a little bit hard for me to draw out. Give me a moment here while we do this. I'm going to give you a little bit of space over here to see this. So here we are now seeing the beginning of the descending colon that is starting out there. So that then is along the left side of your abdomen. Again, remember the directions are reversed because you're looking at this person. So there's the descending colon. And then finally, the descending colon curves and recurves. So it curves twice, forming the sigmoid colon. What did I just say? Now again, this is diagrammatic. So this is not exactly what it is going to look like, but the point is you have a curve, and then it curves again smoothly like that. So here you have this S-shaped area. Let me circle that a bit better. But here we have, as I said, this S-shaped area, and this now, let's do this a little bit more nicely. So we have this, and it goes like that. And so in here then, where it curves and recurves to form an S, you wind up with the sigmoid colon. Sigmoid means S-shaped. So there you can see, as I said, where you wind up having the sigmoid colon. And the sigmoid colon then ends at the rectum. So eventually you're going to have a little area here that has a bunch of longitudinal folds. That then will be the rectum, and finally, there will be a hole with two sphincters around it, which is, of course, the anus. And that's it for the large intestine.